All right, everybody, back with another one. There's been a lot of interesting things happening in the news over the last week since 4th of July week has passed. And one of the biggest things was the big, beautiful bill got passed. And I believe now it's on its way to Donald Trump's desk to be signed into law. And there's a lot of controversy around this. And, on both sides, actually, there are a lot of conservatives that are not happy with it. There's a lot of Democrats that are not happy with it. And then there's a lot of conservatives that are happy with it, and even some Democrats that are kind of happy with some of the stuff in the bill. So, a lot of mixed emotions about that. It's definitely understandable why Trump did that and why he felt he had to do it. He's clearly a man on a mission that's trying to get things done really quickly because his time in office is limited. And we're not going to get back into that today because there's a lot that went into that bill. But the main takeaways are, at least for an economic standpoint, a lot of people are looking at getting some significant savings from their taxes in their paychecks going forward. The different tax brackets are going to be keeping a significant amount more of their take-home pay, and that was a big deal for a lot of people, especially in the middle class. That's the main thing. But there's some other interesting stuff that is also looking like it's going to happen economically. So we're going to take a look at that stuff today, and then we're going to get into Elon Musk's American Party, his new third party, which is, I guess, a technical third party because we have the independents, but that's not really a party. And there are other parties that are around, but they don't get a lot of traction. Elon Musk is a big figure, big media personality, and he's technically the richest person in the world. So there's a good chance there's a lot of weight behind this, but let's see if it actually unfolds. There's also a lot of criticism from people who are saying, especially Trump, that there's always been a two-party system and that's kind of a good thing. It's Republicans and Democrats, and that's not a good thing. We'll dive a little bit into that today. We'll take a look at some of the historical context behind those claims. And then if we have some time, we're going to maybe take a look at one more thing that I find interesting and think that is a big part of what's going on the internet today and the culture of a lot of people who are relying on getting their information from quick snippets online. And it's so frequent and it's changing so vastly on a day-to-day basis that I see it as a lot of people getting shining object syndrome. So we'll take a look at all this stuff. First, we're going to take a look at this article from Yahoo Finance. Trump claims tariffs could eliminate income tax for Americans making under $200,000 a year. Now, I said this in a previous video. I did talk about how I believe it's one of Trump's goals to work slowly but surely towards eliminating the income tax. And there's a lot of heat around the income tax. There has been for a very long time in this country because it's considered unconstitutional to many. There is an amendment that speaks about it, but there is no law on the books that makes claim to Americans having to pay income tax and what that exact amount is by law. And I believe up until this day, I could be wrong, I haven't seen recent data on this, but correct me if I'm wrong if you know better, but I believe up until today, it's technically illegal to not owe taxes, but it's not illegal to not pay your income taxes. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out and not pay their income taxes. I'm just saying I think technically still to this day on the books, it is not illegal to not pay your income taxes. And there have been many people who have gone to court and fought this and won. And they don't so much as win because I don't think they want to set a precedent, but they just don't pursue them anymore because they know that they have no standing. The courts have no standing to go after people to forcibly take their income tax. Income tax is technically a voluntary thing that we pay, but we pay it where it's not really voluntary. We pay it with the mindset of it's a subtle threat. We don't want the government to come after us and attack us and scrutinize us and make our lives a living hell, so we quote unquote voluntarily pay it. But technically, it is supposed to be a voluntary payment to the government, and there is no law currently that says you have to pay it. And again, I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure from last I checked that was the case and still is. But I know Trump has said things about this in the past because he knows that it is unconstitutional. and that amendment should actually be repealed. But, this article says here that Trump claims he's going to eliminate the income tax for people making under $200,000 a year. Nowadays, $200,000 a year is basically a salary of two people combined making $100,000 a year income, which is really not that much money. I know that sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not with today's, you know, cost of living. And after taxes, at 200,000 comes down to probably like 160, maybe, maybe even a little less because that's a higher tax bracket. I think the tax bracket is 150 and above is a higher percentage taken out of your pay. So, they're making anywhere from 140 to 160 take home, and then you have to, pay all your bills on that, take care of a family, whatever your situation is. It's really not that much money. It's definitely a livable amount of money, but you still have to budget. You still have to, pay bills. You still have to live within your means. It's not enough money to be rich or living, this amazing life. And if you're a person that's making $55,000 a year, which I believe is like the median income or average income for the average American, if you take out people who are, multi millionaires and billionaires, that seems like a lot of money because it's four times your salary. But it's really not, and I think it's a very fair number. I probably would have went even higher to about, maybe four or 500,000 because anything after that, you're definitely rich, and that's a different type of lifestyle. Maybe you could afford to pay, but from a constitutional standpoint, I don't think anybody really should. I think if you have a business, your business can, but if you are an individual, you technically should not have to pay income taxes. Now, people might say, well, where are we going to get the money for all these things? Well, if you look at Doge that went through and audited all kinds of departments of government and, other agencies as well, they saw that a lot of the money that was coming from the taxpayers was being wasted on all of these government programs. And then some of them were, shadow companies, shell companies that were backdoors to be able to pass money through to certain organizations or groups. I think just recently they charged 300 plus people with fraud conspiracy for using something with USAID. I'm not exactly sure if it was USAID itself or a company through USAID, but they found clear fraud there and have actually charged people, 300 people plus. So a lot of that money is being wasted by crooked, evil politicians that are taking your tax dollars and doing bad things with it. Now, the way that it used to be and the way that it should still be today is Americans' taxes from their sales from trade is supposed to be covering all of our expenses to run the country. And then anything that's a surplus is supposed to come from tariffs, the way that it always had been done for a very long time in this country. That's why Trump is bringing it back. He's trying to offset the amount of money that we need to continue running the country the way that it currently is without having to continue to raise taxes on Americans and, in fact, do the opposite, lower them and eliminate them to some degree. Because you can't just, and there are a lot of people who are part of this, movement of get rid of all taxes immediately and just go back to sales tax. But there's not enough sales tax to cover the country expenses the way that it's currently run. You would have to shut down a lot of stuff instantaneously, and the problem with that is it will have a chain reaction that will affect other businesses that are legitimate and good or other things in the economy. And that could have a catastrophic effect on the nation where we could go into a recession or a depression. And it would totally negate everything that Trump did with Doge and everything that he's trying to do with making America great again. So you can't just stop on a dime and just have everybody stop paying taxes and then we just use the sales taxes. So what he's doing is smart. He's actually transitioning the country to go back to the way it was, collecting money from tariffs and then doing it through the government so that the government, Congress is involved in everything so that even if he's not still the president, which he won't be in a few more years, the next president can carry that on. So he's setting up the infrastructure for them to carry that on. And he's doing all the deal making for them, doing all the legwork, which is amazing. But yeah, that money should be coming from other countries. Anybody who's against that, in my opinion, is against America, because there's only one reason that you would not want America to collect their fair share from other countries when those countries are doing the exact same thing to us with tariffs, is if you want to see America fail economically or in other ways, because there's no logical reason. Even if you are an immigrant from Italy and you come to America, if Italy is charging us tariffs and America wants to charge tariffs back to collect their fair share, you shouldn't have any problem with that, even if you're an immigrant from Italy and you're coming to America, because it's fair on both sides. Your country is collecting tariffs on our country is doing vice versa. So it's fair. It's a level playing field. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing that's anti other country about that. It's just fair across the board. So what Trump is doing is actually the way that this country was run for a long time, and it was part of what helped us economically become the world superpower. I've said this in previous videos as well. America was the world superpower long before we got into all those major wars and then dropped the atom bomb on Hiroshima and set the precedent that we are the world's superpower in military strength. We were the world's superpower in economic strength first. And a big part of that was tariffs, because for a long time, we were every country, or at least many countries, biggest trade partner. We still are today, but we're not charging them tariffs up until Trump was in office. So that really changed the game now that he's doing that. So the tariffs are going to actually help us offset the money that we need from our taxes, income, sales, all the different taxes that the government charges us for. It's going to be able to offset that, and we're going to be able to collect that difference from other countries. And then Trump can realistically reduce our taxes. So it's a strategy, but it's a rollout strategy. And it's actually brilliant. If somebody were to come into office and say, I'm going to cut all your income taxes, nobody has to pay income tax anymore, I would be skeptical, because I would say, well, you have to supplement it with something. And if you're not going to do tariffs, somehow, some way, this is going to come back to bite the Americans in the ass, because we're going to have to pay for that somehow. You have all these expenses, and it's just like running a business. You have income and expenses. You have a certain amount of expenses. You need a certain amount of income to pay those expenses, and then there's a surplus, and that goes to other things. If you just cut the portion of the income, but the expenses are still there, something has to give. You either have to make more money or you have to cut expenses. And, you know, that could take a while and it would have major repercussions. That would be a chain reaction. But the fact that he's doing the tariffs thing is a quick and immediate way of shifting the income from burden from the American people to other countries to offset that. Now there's a realistic path to actually going and eliminating income taxes for the American people at different stages of their, financial state. And so this is a great start, because most Americans make $200,000 a year and under, the vast majority. So this will be great for the middle class for sure. And it will also be great for the poor class as well, because, the middle class and the poor class are really the ones that are the backbone of America. They pay the most amount of money. They pay the most amount of money that stabilizes the economy, the middle class in particular, than the poor class, because the poor class get a lot of breaks as well when it comes to taxes. But um, this is going to benefit both, and since those are the largest pools of people in America, in the financial brackets, the poor and middle class, imagine not paying any more income taxes. Think about how many thousands of dollars a year, every year going forward for the rest of your life that would save you, that now you could reinvest back into your home or reinvest into purchases of things that you need if you need a new car or something, or just investments long term over time, compounding for your retirement. So there's a lot that can be done with that, but this is going to be great if it actually goes through. So we'll just take a quick look at the article here. And again, this is Yahoo Finance, incredible website. When tariffs cut in, many people's income will be substantially reduced. There you go. It's the tariffs offset. Maybe even completely eliminated, Trump declared in a Truth Social post on April 27th. Focus will be on people making less than $200,000 a year. That's a bold promise considering that only 14.4% of US households earn more than 200,000 exactly, so the vast majority don't, which is about 85%. According to the Census Bureau, in other words, Trump's vision holds true. The vast majority will pay no income tax. So I guess it's just a quick article. Economist Erica York, Tax Foundation were blunt, explaining in a response April 28th that the individual income tax raises more than 27 times as much revenue as tariffs currently do. Even eliminating income taxes for a subset of taxpayers, such as those earning 200,000 or less, would require significantly higher replacement revenues than tariffs could generate. Well, that's not true. They estimate that the tariffs Trump has imposed and scheduled as of April 2025 would generate nearly 167 billion in total in new federal tax revenue in 2025, covering less than 25% of the cost of eliminating income taxes for the people earning below $200,000. Now, I don't know if that's true. I think at this point, the income from the tariffs have actually been higher than that. I could be wrong on the data. It's always changing, obviously, because the money keeps coming in. So I think it is higher now. And yes, we do have to definitely get to the goal of where we need to match the income from the income taxes of the American people. But as time goes on, we will be obviously making more money on tariffs. And as the economy gets better and there's more trade happening between America and other countries, we will definitely be collecting more tariffs on those other nations. So over time, no, I think this is a growth strategy. It will continue to increase the amount of money that we collect on tariffs, and that will eventually grow and build to offset the income taxes that we're collecting on the American people. So we'll see how it unfolds over time, but I'm pretty confident that I'd say by the end of Trump's term this time around, we'll probably have accomplished some degree of this, if not every single person. 200,000 and less, he might get people 100,000 and less, or at least some sort of number. But I would imagine by the end of his first term, he'll probably accomplish some percentage of this goal. So now we're going to take a look at Elon Musk launching this new American Party, I believe it is, and we're going to learn about what that whole thing is. So I believe this just happened over the holiday weekend, but he has apparently launched this American Party, American political party founded by Elon Musk. This is the website, theamericaparty.org. Elon Musk has announced the formation of a new political party called the America Party, aiming to challenge the traditional two-party system in the U.S. However, it is still unclear if the party has been officially registered with the elections authorities. Let's see key details. Musk created the American Party to address what he perceives as a lack of true democracy in the U.S. See, now, there's a little bit of an issue there because, and I've been over this before, but that's the problem with some people. They have such a voice and they have such a control over the narrative that they've found a way to manipulate the people into, because a lot of people don't do their own research, into believing what they say and then jumping on board with their idea as to what America should look like. America should really only look like a handful of things. The country that God created it to be from the beginning. Obviously, it's going to change a little bit over time because the people, are not perfect and they're going to, change certain things and their behaviors and their culture is going to change. And also, different technologies and advancements will change the way we do certain things. So it won't stay the same forever. It's not a time capsule. That's why the Constitution is a living document. What God designed it to be. And what the Constitution lays out that it is. And that is a nation where the people govern. They're also self-sufficient and independent. So they don't rely on the government. The government works for them and their best interest. But at any moment in time, they control the ultimate power over the government. That's how it used to be. That's how it was for a very long time until we've been conquered by our government. And then now the culture and the way that people just live their lives and don't really know anything, and no one teaches anybody anything anymore, will definitely change that over time, and it has. And there's really not much you can do it other than re-educate people and then re-inspire them to want to uphold all that again, which is what I hope to do a little bit with this channel. But America is not a democracy. And I've said this many times in the past, and a lot of people don't know that, but certain people who maybe come from certain countries and they are used to or looking at this idea of democracy as like this utopian way of running a country where the people all get a vote on what they want the country to look like. And the problem with democracy is that goalpost can shift from time to time. And whoever has the loudest voice and gets the biggest following can control the mob. And then it becomes mob rule where the majority votes for what they want, and that keeps bouncing back and forth. But the problem also on top of that is the majority of people are not good people. And the majority of people are sinners. And they're always going to choose what they selfishly want for themselves before they choose what's right. That's just the way it is. And that's how the Bible describes humanity, basically. The constitutional republic that we have is pretty clear where the rights are laid out, and the person, even with the littlest voice, has an equal vote to masses. And also, if everybody adheres to staying true to God, staying true to our morals and values and our beliefs, and staying true to the Constitution, even if what you want, no, selfishly you want something, if it contradicts all those other things, not only are you and should be overruled, but you should also govern yourself into saying, well, I really would like a world like this, but it contradicts what God put in place and what the Constitution says. Therefore, I can't have what I want. It's not my way. It's not my world. I'm not a God, and I'm not a puppet master. I am a free individual and hopefully a Christian that is going to continue to uphold God and the Constitution because it's for the betterment of mankind, and that includes me. And if I get selfish, then it becomes every man for himself, and it becomes a world where it is a democracy. It's a popularity contest, it's high school, it's whoever is the cool person gets to lead the pack, and all their ideas are what everybody votes for, and then it just keeps bouncing from person to person, and you're making it about the person over the country and over God. And that's where the differences really lie when it comes to a democracy and a constitutional republic, and it goes much deeper than that, but that's pretty much the overall idea. So when he says things like perceives that there's a lack of democracy in the US, that's because we're not a democracy, and there shouldn't be. There's certain things about our nation that are democratic and in the way that we do things, but we are a constitutional republic, and the country should be run that way. This is not a popularity contest. And Elon, he has this way about him where he runs X, and he, uses his voice and his money and his power and his popularity to sway the people. And he, I think, looks at it kind of like a game where he's coming from. But that's one of the beautiful things about our constitutional republic. It protects us from really well spoken, really cool, really interesting people that can easily sway the masses. And this is also a good thing from a religious standpoint because it actually protects the people from an antichrist. Not saying that Elon is antichrist, I'm just saying in general. It says in the Bible that the antichrist will be somebody who is charismatic, well spoken, and somebody that the people really like, somebody that the people find charming. So, it will protect the people from getting duped into just going and following blindly some person that they just really like, even if their ways and what they're preaching is contradicting the Constitution. So it really protects people, our nation as a whole, and it even protects the little guy who doesn't have a voice as big as somebody like Elon or someone else. So that's just another thing that I see, and I just the way that some of the stuff that's worded, I kind of see it in a different light, I guess. He claims that the party will give citizens back their freedom and represent their interests more effectively. Now, a party won't give the American people their freedom. They have to fight for their freedoms, and they have to fight to have the government continue to protect their rights and freedoms because that's what the government is supposed to do. The reason we lost our freedoms is not because we chose the wrong party. It's because the people got lazy and they started just deciding, happiness and luxury and fun was more important than paying attention to what's going on in politics, studying your history, learning about this nation, its founding, and what our ancestors went through in order to get us the freedoms that we have to begin with. And then practicing on a consistent basis how to uphold those freedoms while also staying true to their faith and having moral values that they stand behind. We're living in a very vain world today, and a lot of people are looking for immediate instant gratification. I've said this in videos in the past that you should focus more on delayed gratification. It's more rewarding, but there are people who are just more preoccupied with having fun all the time and living this idea of a good life or a utopic life where everything is about what you see on social media. That's not really true, but that is a great illusion that the public paints, influencers specifically paint to other people about how glamorous their life is, and then other people get upset and then they seek that life, and then it's everybody forgets about the important things that really matter. Experts suggest that Musk will face significant hurdles in establishing the party, including gaining ballot access in various states. Historically, third parties in the US have struggled to achieve long-term success due to a lack of resources and institutional support. Okay, so that is a little bit about that. And now we're going to take a look at something because some people, Trump included, have said that we've only really ever had two parties in this country, the Republican and the Democrat Party. That's actually not true. And that the third parties don't work and they are, never have worked, never will work, and sort of alluded to the idea that no one will ever win from a third party, which is funny because ironically, people said he would never win. People said that an outsider like him, who wasn't chosen by the elites or whatever, the club, would never win. And he won not only once, but twice. So we'll take a look at something now. I've done this in the past, but we'll look at it a little bit differently in this context and just kind of show you over time that there has been other parties and there have been some successful people from those other parties, and that America kind of needs other parties because if it's just a two-party system, then it's a 50-50 choice. You basically just choose one side or choose the other. And that becomes a lot like a sporting event where you're choosing your team or the other team. Now you're not looking at the individual candidate. You're just automatically saying, I choose my team over the other team. And that's why we got into this mess in the first place in this country. People got lazy and they just started voting based on their team's colors, red or blue, right? And it's not the right way to do things. We're supposed to vote for the individual candidate and their policies. And third and fourth and fifth parties actually add value to that because it really makes it that the best person wins. If you have five different people from five different parties and they're all going for the same position, the person who wins with, you know, 27% is going to beat out the others, and they are really going to have to work hard for that percent, much more than having to work for a couple of points over one other person from one other party. So I personally think it's a lot better for this country to have multiple parties. And, we'll see how that unfolds over time. But we've had a two-party system for quite a while, and everybody kind of knows from the past, not before Trump, that system was really just the same party just two different sides of the same party. And that it kind of has gotten corrupted to the point where, it was just people getting handpicked as to who the choice was going to be for the American people, who was the choice going to be for the left and for the right, but they're both handpicked by elites or whoever is, pulling the strings. And the American people had the illusion of choice. But either way, you were still getting a candidate that was controlled by some person, some group, some whatever, and was not going to have the best interests of the people in mind. Trump is an anomaly because he broke through all that. So he set a precedent that an outsider can come into the two main parties and disrupt them. RFK Jr. tried that with the Democrats, and he made some headway, but they would never let that happen because they have a stronger hold on it. But I think in the future, hopefully we will have multiple parties and the politicians will really have to fight for that position. And the best person will more likely win because you can't control five, six, seven different parties and do it all the time. People are going to break through. But you can control one or two parties a lot easier than that. So let's take a look at something now. So these are the election years. These are the different politicians technically who won the presidency and who was running during that time. And we're going to look at this a little bit today just to get a better idea as to who the politicians were and what party they were affiliated with, and which ones won by which percentage. So get a little bit more background on that. But this is the American Presidency Project. If you want the website, it's just look up American Presidency Project. It details all of this stuff, and you can do the research on your own. You can also look at other sources as well, but this is the one that I chose for this video. So for the first election, which if you didn't know was 1789, was George Washington, because he had led the army, he won the war. He was basically the leader that was so influential in winning the American Revolutionary War. He was the one that the people saw as their leader already. So it just made perfect sense that he would be the president, and that's why he won with 100% vote. At that time, he ran unopposed because everybody just kind of knew you weren't beating Washington. He was the guy that everybody looked up to. He was like the Trump of the beginning. So he was actually part of an unofficial party, but pretty much the Federalist Party, and that was 1789. So the next election was 1792, and again, you had Washington run unopposed. Now there's more states, and again, unofficial but Federalist Party. So if you didn't know from the very beginning, again, because we have a constitutional republic, everything was sort of centered around the republic and at the beginning, and it was for a very long time in America. But at one point, the Democrat Republican Party was one. So, like I said, this backs up my statement that it really was always kind of a two-party system that was really just one party, but two different sides of it. And this goes back to the second president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, one of the founders who helped build this country. So he finally ran because Washington set the precedent. He was not going to run again. If he ran, 3, 4 more times, I guarantee you they probably would have elected him every time. That's how much he was liked back then, more than any other president in American history, of course. But he didn't want to become a king. He finally decided, you know what, no president should run more than 2 terms. And up until FDR, that was actually never a law. It was just like an unwritten rule that, as a matter of not becoming a king, no president shall run more than 2 terms. So Washington set that standard, but it was really more of a standard from a standpoint of just doing the right thing. But it wasn't officially a law for a while. So he stepped down, and since he was the main person that everybody knew was just going to keep winning, this gave John Adams and Thomas Jefferson their chance to, run and you know, become the next president after Washington. So as you can see here, John Adams obviously won. He ran on the coattails of Washington in the Federalist Party. So now he was a declared Federalist at that time, and he officially started the actual Federalist Party. So he became the second president, as if you're not aware. And then you had Thomas Jefferson, who ran with the Democrat Republican Party. So this continues on for the next election. Again, John Adams wins. Then you have Thomas Jefferson win. Um, and this was the first time a different party won in 1789. So 11 years later, you had your second party officially be a part of the presidency. And this is where the Democrat Republican Party was basically born. And it continues on throughout the years. So I'm not going to go through every single year because that'll take a while. Essentially, this continued until 24. Now you have multiple different candidates running for president at the same time and all from pretty much the same party. So you had Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, William H. Crawford, and Henry Clay. And these were all people running for the presidency, which John Quincy Adams won. So now you had everybody was running for the same party, but four different people were allowed to run and get voted on for the presidency at that time. So it wasn't just one person who won, for that party as the sole candidate, and that's it. These were four people that the people wanted to vote on, and they voted on them, and the best man won. But this was the first election where you had four different candidates, get voted on, and the best man did win. And John Quincy Adams was already president before, so people liked him. They wanted him to continue. So then we continue on, and now you have the election of 1828. John Quincy Adams switched and went to a different party, the National Republican Party, and Andrew Jackson made the Democrat Republican Party the Democrat Party. So this was officially the birth of the Democrat Party by itself and under Andrew Jackson. And then now you have the pretty much the infancy. And a lot of people say that Abraham Lincoln invented the Republican Party. That's not totally true. The National Republican Party was pretty much established by John Quincy Adams in this election of 1828. And then again in 1832, multiple parties. This time you have four different individual parties with four different candidates all running, and the best man won. Andrew Jackson won before. The people liked him. They wanted him to run again and be their president again. And sure enough, he won in 1832. So you have the Democratic Party, the National Republican Party, which now Henry Clay was running, for, and John Quincy Adams was out. The Independent Party, which was, I guess, an official party at the time, John Floyd, and then the anti-Masonic William Wirt, because at that time there was a lot of, issues with people not liking the Masons, feeling that the Masons were trying to corrupt America and that the Masons were actually infiltrating the nation. They started out as a organization that was, pro-America and a big part of the founding. A lot of the founding fathers were involved. And then there's talk about how, people like Washington were in it. But then at one point, Washington actually renounced his membership and said he didn't want any part of it because he saw that it was, corrupted and going to be used to try and hurt America. And there's a whole bunch on that. You can look into it on your own time. I'm not going to get to the conspiracy of the Masons because that's a deep rabbit hole, but you have four different parties here. One of them was the anti-Masonic party. So you actually have some interesting parties here. Only one person won one state out of it, but still you had a state that was won by a member of a third or fourth party. Now you have 1830 Democrat Party, three members, actually four members from the Whig Party, and the Democrat Martin Van Buren won, but again, actually five different candidates. 1840, now you no longer see a lot of those other parties. It was the Whig Party and the Democrat Party. William Henry Harrison, he won that one, beat out Martin Van Buren, who wasn't really that popular. Now, for the 1848 election, you had the Whig and the Democrats. Zachary Taylor won, and then you had the Free Soil Party, which Martin Van Buren switched over to a third party to try and win because he didn't win the last election and had just served the one term, tried to do his own third party. That failed, and he never became president again. But that party continued. Free Soil, John P. Hale, he ran under that party. And then the Whig and the Democrat, so 1852. And now you have the official Republican Party, 1856, John C. Fremont. So this is before Lincoln. And you have an official Democrat Party, an official Republican Party, and then a Whig American Party, which is funny because I almost feel like Elon chose the American Party name on purpose because maybe he knows the history of this. But there was a Whig American Party at one point in the 1856 election, right before the Civil War era. And it's kind of interesting that, that's kind of what's going on now. There's a little bit of a civil war between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and how Elon was on his team and he was all gung ho MAGA, and then he all of a sudden split off, and now he's trying to create a third party to attack Trump and the two-party system, which is the Democrat and Republican. And at that very time in history, 1856, you have a Democrat Party, a Republican Party, and then a third party, American Party. I mean, that's kind of ironic. I don't know if he planned that or if it's just a coincidence or if higher power is motivating him towards that, but there is something interesting and ironic about how history maybe doesn't always repeat itself, but it does rhyme in a way. And this is one of those times. This is pre-Civil War. A third party came about, and it was the Whig American Party, and that's kind of what's happening now with Elon Musk. So kind of interesting. But then, of course, you get into the next election, which is the election of 1860, and this is the election that Lincoln won, where he was the declared candidate for the Republican Party. But again, as you just saw, he was not the first person to be a candidate for the Republican Party. But you had Abraham Lincoln, then you had the Southern Democratic Party. So they switched. This is another big lie that they don't, they try to sell people on that the war was between the North and the South. And that's true to a certain extent. But it actually had a lot to do with the two-party system. It was really between the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Republicans were the ones in the North. The Democrats were the ones in the South. They were the ones that were pro-slavery. They were the ones that were pro-segregation and all these things that the modern day Democrats and liberals pretend was always the racist Republicans. But if you know your history, the Democrats were originally the racists, and they even changed the name of the party from the Democratic Party to the Southern Democratic Party to make sure that it was declared that if you were part of the South, you were a Democrat and you were Team Democrat. And if you were part of the North, you were with the Republicans and Lincoln and that whole movement. So this was a important time in history, and it was a line in the sand. They were saying if you are with the Democrats, you are with the South. And if you are with the Republicans, you're with the North. So for anybody who likes to pretend or give false history that the, racists, the ones that wanted slavery to continue were the Republicans, you don't know your history. Look at it. Look back, do your own research. The Democrats were the ones that were involved with that stuff. And then you also had the Constitutional Union Party and the Democratic Party, so a separate party for the Democrats. So again, even during the time of the Civil War, multiple parties, four parties and four different candidates. And this was good because at such a polarizing time, it made sure that the right people got elected to their positions during this pivotal time in history where there was a war and where there was a huge divide and where America would change and go forward differently than it had looked before. But Abraham Lincoln won, and good thing he did because maybe he was the only one that would have won the Civil War and helped the country get to the place that it's at today. Because our country might have looked a lot differently in the future if he didn't win and we didn't end slavery and do some other things that Lincoln did. It wasn't just about slavery. But now you have the election of 1864. Abraham Lincoln won, pretty much unanimously because he was a strong leader and the Civil War was going on and people wanted him to stay in power. And so that Civil War kind of solidified things for a while. It really made the country a two-party system where you were either a Republican or a Democrat because those two parties were associated with the North and the South. So for a while, people were afraid to do anything different than that because it was like you were pledging your allegiance to something other than the side that you and your ancestors fought on in the most important war in our country since the American Revolutionary War. For a long time, it was a two-party system. But then again, in 1892, just before the turn of the century, you had the another third party pop up. Now, Grover Cleveland won. He was a Democrat, and actually, he was a pretty good president, believe it or not, even though he was a Democrat. But he beat out the Republican. Now, for a while, the Republican Party had such a strong hold because of the Civil War, and everybody was, happy with that conclusion for the most part, except the people who, lost because they wanted to continue that way of life. But you had the Republican Party, the Democrats, and then a third party, the Populist Party. That's when the party started coming back again. And now in 1912, you had the Democrat Woodrow Wilson. He won. Theodore Roosevelt was actually part of the Progressive Party, which is funny because now today that's a term that the Democrats use. And, originally it wasn't that way. It was its own thing. And then you had the Republican Party, William Howard Taft, and the Socialist Party, Eugene V. Debs. So there was an official Socialist Party at one point, which is funny because that's when officially communism and socialism really started creeping into our country because at the turn of the century, you had a lot of the immigrants coming in from other countries where they were coming from democracies or socialist countries or communist countries, and they were leaving those countries for a lot of the freedoms that Americans had, but they were bringing their ideologies with them. And many of that has crept its way into our culture today with unions and, you know, welfare programs, universal income, things like that, social security. These are all socialist social security programs that have come into the country starting around the early 90s during that time. So you had an official socialist party at one point, which is funny because they're making such a big deal about that today as though it's something new. Bernie Sanders and AOC, and now this new guy, the mayor from New York, that I did a video on recently, are socialists, and socialism is coming to America. 1912, over 100 years ago, there was an official socialist party, and a person ran for president under it, socialist. So here we are now in 1924. You had the Republicans, Calvin Coolidge, the Democrats, and then the Progressive Party. So that was again another party that continued on in the early 1900s, 1920s. Great time in American history. I won't go into all that FDR stuff. I've done it in the past, but he served multiple terms, and that's when that ended. And now it was official that you could only be served 2 terms as president. But now going forward from 1948, you had the Democrat Party, the Republican Party, and the States' Right Party, which Strom Thurmond was, really a person that a lot of people liked back then, and he was part of that third party, and he took up a decent amount of votes. He got 4 states in that election, and again in the 1968 election, the American Independent Party, George Wallace. Then you had Ross Perot in the 90s, who ran on the Reform Party. A lot of people liked him. He was another very popular candidate. The Green Party with Ralph Nader in 2000. 2016, you had the Libertarian Party and the Green Party, if you remember those people. And then in the 2020 and 2024 elections, you had other people run under other parties as well, and they took up about 3 million votes. So there you have it. You have people that won from the Federalist Party, Democrat Republican Party, the Republican Party, the Whig Party, many different parties throughout history. It's not just a two-party system. It hasn't always been that way. Yes, there are moments in history where it has just been two parties, and that's completely understandable because a lot of times you do just narrow it down to 1 or 2 people that you could actually see running the country, and everybody else just doesn't have as much traction. It is not that appealing to the American people. But Democrats and Republicans have not only been the people who have been presidents in this nation, other people have. So it's important to know your history, and it's important to know that, America's not done being written. Anything is possible for the future. we might see a third-party candidate win the presidency in the next 10, 20, 30 years. We don't know. So I'm interested to see what's happening with this American party from Elon Musk. I hope in a way it gains traction. I hope in a way that we see other parties as well pop up. And I hope that Americans begin again to vote for the politician, the individual, and their policies over party. Because then it becomes like a sporting event where you're just picking your team and your colors. And it's not the way that we were intended to vote in this nation. So be informed, especially with these midterm elections coming up at some point in the next year and a half. Be informed, vote for the actual candidate. Don't just vote for the team, vote for the color. But also, it is interesting to see what's going on with this party. Let's see how it unfolds. There is some interesting parallels there, like I said, between the American party of the past before the Civil War and the one that Elon's doing now. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but it's an interesting take. I don't really hear anybody else talking about this, so hopefully it's some original content for you. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Next video, I'll try and do that thing I was going to do in the end of this video, but we don't really have that much time. But yeah, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Keeps the channel growing. Put in the comments if there's any topics that you want me to do, and put in the comments if there's any interesting guests that you would like me to interview, or direct message me if you want to keep it private. I'm looking to start doing that this year. So hopefully we'll start getting guests on within the next few months. I'm just working out all the details on that, and hopefully it'll be interesting people that have interesting stories and things that they can bring to the conversation, and hopefully it's stuff that you'll like to hear. But that's it for this video. Don't forget to stay for the ad at the end too. Take a look at the children's book that's on sale now, my children's book, and our apparel shop, which has a lot of great stuff. At some point, I'm gonna also I'll try and get some of the designs that are more, newer and interesting that I don't currently have on hand. And we will maybe add that into the video, show you some of the cool designs, unique designs that we created, and some of the stuff that's on sale now. So we'll see about doing that in the future. But the ad has it all at the end of this video. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Stay tuned for the next one. All right, everybody, I just want to take a moment to promote my children's book. This is Little Boy Full of Love. That's me on the back. And this is a little sneak peek on the inside. It's a great book. It's a children's book. I actually wrote this for my son. And it's available right now on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, Bookshop.org, and a lot of other online platforms. But more importantly to me, it's actually available in a lot of bookstores throughout the country. You can find out which ones are closest to you on my Instagram page. We highly recommend that you shop local, buy from a local bookstore. So if you are looking to, get a children's book for you or anybody you know, or even with the holidays coming up, it's a great time to, buy a children's book as a gift. Definitely get it from a bookstore that's local to you. But if you absolutely can't get it from one of the bookstores that are currently carrying it right now, and we're in about 15 or 16 different states across the country, so it may actually be in your state, and it could even be local to you. But if you can't get it from the physical bookstore, check out our Amazon storefront. The book's available on there right now. And like I said, with the holidays coming up, you may want to do your Christmas or Hanukkah or holiday shopping early, and you can even order it from our Amazon storefront and ship it directly to whoever you're gifting it to. But it's available on those platforms, Amazon storefront and bookstores and other websites that I mentioned. But I want to take a moment here to look at the storefront just to give you an idea of some other stuff that we have available on there. These are products that we highly recommend. They are things that we use in our daily lives, and it's all organized by category. So it's a lot easier to, shop for the holidays and specifically for things that interest you, particular categories. Available right now, many different items on our storefront. If you can see here, 61 items just in women's apparel, fall decor, because right now we're in fall, 26 items, kitchen items, baking specifically, things for around the house, children's toys, even stuff for parties. If you're trying to save money on a party and throwing your own, occasion, you can even buy some cool gadgets here to help you, put on a better party. Health and wellness items here, even stuff for Christmas. And there's the book right there. So you can get it from the storefront, you can get it from the bookstores, like I mentioned, but it's available on all these different platforms. It's really easy to find and gift to somebody. Also, I want to show you the apparel shop, and these are some clothing items that we actually produced. So if you're looking to get some cool apparel items, shirts, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, leggings, even accessories, cell phone cases, women's makeup bags, fanny packs, coffee mugs, all different types of stuff, even some, art, all different categories here: apparel, homeware, accessories, drinks, even digital items. It's all on this store, healthybodygoodssoul.com. Anything that pertains to you or somebody that you're looking to get a gift for the holidays. A lot of great designs on here, a lot of cool designs that we actually custom created. Stainless steel water bottles, especially now with the fall and winter. A lot of cool hoodies and long sleeve shirts. This is a really cool one, I think, for women. The original Be Your Soul apparel, that one's actually really popular. People tend to like that. This one's one of my favorites. The free shirt. It's the American flag, and it says free, and that says not property of the United States government. That one's pretty cool. Got all different types of tank tops, hoodies, long sleeve, short sleeve, tote bags, coffee mugs, even some items for kids, backpacks. So if you're the type that likes to, plan ahead, I would definitely recommend ordering from the Amazon storefront or the apparel shop within the next couple of weeks to get everything in time for the holidays. Use code SAVE15 on the apparel shop to save 15% off everything on the storefront. So order within the next week or two, and you'll definitely have everything in time for the holidays. Definitely check out all the links to everything, the Amazon storefront, the book, and the apparel shop in my bio on all my platforms: Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify. But you can also find them in all the show notes for every episode that I post, and get all your orders in time for the holidays. All right, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It helps the channel continue to grow. And put in the comments things that you would like me to talk about and make videos on for the future, and I will definitely do my best to do that. Stay tuned for the next one.